BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Alasdair Lamont. This is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Monday the 26th of May. And it's been a special weekend for Aberdeen.
I've run for it the last week. It's played over and over in my head. I had real belief this week that we could do it. Everyone wrote us off. You can't describe this feeling with the fans.
First cup win since 1990 for the Dons, denying Celtic a treble. And in the Women's Cup final,
here's a chance. Chelsea corner into the air, leads it inside. There's the third. Kirsty Howard makes it Glasgow City 0, Rangers 3.
Rangers ease past Glasgow City to claim a cup double. Meanwhile, the managerial merry-go-round just keeps on turning.
Kilmarnock are to announce that Stuart Kettlewell is their new manager. It will be the third team 40-year-old Kettlewell has managed after Ross County and Motherwell.
Could it be the dawning of a new era at Kilmarnock?
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, very appropriately, we've got former Killie goalkeeper Cammy Bell along with Michael Grant of the Times, the Scottish football correspondent there, to chat through all of those things with us. How are you today, gentlemen?
Excellent, Alasdair. An excellent weekend.
Come down from cloud nine yet, have we?
No. Several weeks, and basically until Aberdeen play again, I should feel quite high.
Well, as we say, lots to discuss as always with Cammy and Michael. So we will start from the events on Saturday at Hampden. I mean, I just don't think really anyone, Michael, predicted that. I mean, I know Willie Miller, who was doing the radio commentary with me, he did say Aberdeen will win it, but I almost get the impression that he was saying it because he was expected to say it. You know, did anyone genuinely believe that could happen?
No, probably not really. I had a feeling that they might make it more competitive than the recent games against Celtic. You know, you might say that's not difficult given the hidings that they've taken. You know, a couple of 5-1s and the 6-0. And I suppose what was really interesting about the final was we learned that, you know, Jimmy Tilleen can be flexible and adaptable in his tactics, because that was a little bit of a criticism that was growing about him, that he had one way of playing and he's kind of stuck to his principles, and it wasn't working against Celtic. It was giving them far too much space. It was exposing the defence. And I think Aberdeen supporters were anxious that the same thing would happen again at Hampden, and not only that they would lose the final, but they would lose quite heavily and possibly even be embarrassed. I was glad even before the ball was kicked, you could see that the team was different. You could see that the shape was different, and it would be a back three, back five. And I suppose that really was the key to the game, you know, because it gave them a real foothold until deep into the second half. Even a goal down, they were still in the match, and they were able to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, Cammy, the fact that Aberdeen changed formation and stuff like that, I think in principle, clearly that wasn't a bad idea in the sense that, you know, it hadn't been working for them the way they generally played against Celtic. So yes, to try something different. But it struck me as a big risk to move to a 5 at the back for that one particular game without ever really having given it a run out. Now, clearly it worked out for him, but it was a chance that Jimmy Tilleen took with that, wasn't it?
It was a chance, Al, but again, I feel like it was a risk that he had to take. I feel what Michael's saying there, they've had previous encounters with each other, and yes, Celtic have came out on top quite handsomely on a number of occasions. So I think he had to make that change. He'll have worked on it all week. He'll have been in training, making sure that the players understood their roles, and they certainly done that. They stuck to the roles, even when they went one behind. They didn't panic. They still stuck to their task, and they made it difficult for Celtic. They frustrated them. There wasn't a lot of gaps. There wasn't a lot of space. So yeah, listen, I think Jimmy Tilleen got his tactics absolutely spot on yesterday.
One of the players who kind of benefited, I suppose, from that change of shape was Jack Milne, who he'd only started one game in the league, and he was drafted in to start in the middle of that back three. And Michael, I know he was probably beaten in the air by Carter Vickers for the Celtic goal, but that aside, I thought he had an absolutely flawless performance, a real kind of coming of age performance almost from the young man.
Yeah, terrific. And you know, they needed that. He needed that, and the team needed that because it was such an important position. Ademida, I thought, was really quiet in the match. I thought Milne was excellent. I mean, he's sometimes played at right back for Aberdeen in his kind of infrequent appearances, you know. So it said a lot for he's 22. You know, he's effectively a pretty inexperienced kid almost in first team terms. But you know, I talked earlier about tactics and the shape that Tulane had, but you need more than that to overcome Celtic. You need everybody. You know, Cammy will know this as well. You need everybody in the team to deliver, really. You can't carry any passengers if you're going to try and live with Celtic over what turned out to be 120 minutes. And they did that. I mean, Aberdeen, a lot of their individual performances have been really poor in recent weeks, but that wasn't the case on Saturday.
No, definitely not. And one other man that you kind of have to pick out, Cammy, Dimitar Mitov, I suppose the hero in the penalty shootout, but also he came up with that big save from Dyson Maida in injury time as well, and he'd certainly, you know, stood up to all that was thrown at him more or less over the course of the game.
Yeah. Again, I've always thought he's a top goalkeeper for me. Yes, he's had his injury problems, but certainly yesterday that save from Dyson Maida, they're the match-winning saves. They're the ones that get you over the line. They're the ones that make the difference, because that did make the difference at that time in the game. When he makes that save, I think his teammates then start to believe again they can get through this, they can win the tie. Even when you go down to the penalties, you know your goalie's made that big save. He's got them big saves in him. He can go and make them saves in the penalty shootout. So he was phenomenal yesterday, and I feel like if you are to beat Celtic, you need your goalkeeper to have one of them big games, make big saves, and he done that yesterday. And yes, listen, he deserves all the credit that he's getting today.
Yeah, too right. You know, the other aspect of it, I suppose, if we look a little bit further ahead, is of course, you know, guaranteed European League football up till the turn of the year, Michael, for Aberdeen. The financial rewards, obviously, that come with that, and then the knock-on effect that has for Hibs, who were probably fairly certain they were getting that for themselves, having finished third and expecting Celtic to do the business on Saturday. And then, you know, so that both them and Dundee United, they have a bit more qualifying to do in Europe now. Yeah,
and they don't have the certainty. You know, Aberdeen have got the certainty of group stage football, whether it's Europa League or Conference League. That really helps a club because it can, you know, their planning can be informed, their budget can be informed with the fact that they know this money's coming in. Their close season can be a little bit longer because they're coming in later. So yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly, Hibs would have been spewing at that result because they would have thought Celtic were going to win, you know. So it's the great double kind of joy for a club like Aberdeen of winning the cup. You know, you've got all the thrill and the sheer excitement of winning the trophy, especially after so long, and then you get this beautiful sort of second reward of guaranteed a European campaign, and that's significant money coming into the club, you know. And I asked Tulane about it afterwards. I said, you know, we've seen that clubs, Aberdeen and Hearts, have struggled to run that kind of parallel thing of a domestic campaign and Europe. And did he think that they could kind of buck that trend and do better? And he said, well, it's about getting in every season. He said that's what a club has to aim to do to get that European group campaigns. The Old Firm get it, but other clubs don't. And he thinks that would really grow the club if they're able to do that annually.
Yeah, well, you know, positive times in that sense for Aberdeen, absolutely ahead, and a good summer. You know, Aberdeen fans will go away and really lap that up for the next few months, I imagine. As for Celtic, Cammy, as Michael says, you know, the feeling was essentially that if they turned up and had a half decent game, that they would be too good for Aberdeen. They just weren't at it. You know, they weren't near their best. What do you think went wrong for them?
Yeah, listen, Brendan Rodgers said it after the game. They just didn't do enough, and they didn't do enough on the day. I felt like they played a lot of safe passes, which isn't like Celtic in finals as well. When they're normally confident, they'll move that ball really quick. You've got to give credit to Aberdeen. Aberdeen had a good shape about them. They frustrated Celtic at times. They reduced them to a number of opportunities. Yes, Engels hits the post. You've got Sloop hits the bar. So there was opportunities, but not a great deal. You would have expected more from Celtic. I just feel like I can't quite put my finger on where they went wrong. yesterday. The intensity wasn't there. The quality wasn't there either. And probably a mixture of that. Just it almost ended up a little bit of a laboured performance from Celtic. And as Brendan Rodgers says, he just didn't do enough to get the result.
You really got a feel for how much it meant to Callum McGregor at the end. He was so emotional having missed that first penalty. There are some guys, Michael, you probably don't mind seeing missed penalties and shootouts and stuff like that, a bit of schadenfreude or whatever, but Callum McGregor's not one of them, is he? Like he's had such an amazing season for Celtic, but he's a good guy as well. He comes across well, and but someone, I guess, has got to be the villain in that sense.
Yeah, totally. I did feel sorry for Callum because, I mean, God, nobody's done more than him to kind of haul Celtic to where they are in the last season or two, or since he took over from Scott Brown as the captain. And I thought even in the final, the work rate that he put in, the amount Brendan Rodgers makes a lot of play about counter pressing. When Celtic give the ball away, they win it back quickly. They're aggressive, and nobody's better than that than him at that. And I thought he was doing that again in the final. One other thing I would say, Al, is I thought the Aberdeen support was terrific, and I thought it visually added a lot to the occasion. They had this thing, didn't they, about wearing all in red, and I think it was a real argument for the 50-50 split if two supports are big enough to justify it. I thought that was. I just wanted to make that point because I thought that brought a lot to the occasion. It certainly helped Aberdeen that they didn't psychologically feel kind of outnumbered and outgunned when they walked out.
Well, on Sunday afternoon, the Women's Cup final saw Rangers comfortably beat Glasgow City 3-0. Cammy, it was a cup double for Rangers in the end after the disappointment of the league, the way the league wound up, losing out to Hibs on the last day. Is that sufficient consolation, do you think, for Rangers and what they expect?
Listen, the big blow for Rangers is obviously missing out on the Champions League football, and certainly, yes. Listen, it was a brilliant reaction from last week because it was such a huge disappointment at Ibrox when they got beat to Hibs 1-0 last week, and to have that reaction the week later, such a disappointment to get yourselves back up for it in a difficult game against Glasgow City today as well. It was always going to be a tough game for them, but again, they showed the quality that they've got. They got that kind of early breakthrough, a great goal from the edge of the box. It was a brilliant finish as well, and then Kirsty Howat adds 2 goals to it and makes it a comfortable afternoon for Rangers. So yes, they'll be happy that they've got the job done today, but again, they'll probably look back and think there's certainly a slight disappointment in this season.
The thing about Glasgow City, Michael, is they've been synonymous with success and trophy wins for the last, as long as I can remember, sort of decade and a half easily in women's football. And obviously that's now 2 kind of trophyless seasons, which I guess just, they were right in there challenging for all the trophies, but didn't quite get over the line in any of them, which will be a big disappointment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as you say, from the outside, you're looking at the women's scene and you're thinking that Glasgow City are very much the kind of dominant team, and they have been for so long. And I'm not saying they had it easy, but they got their own way a lot in terms of the power that they had. And obviously the women's game is changing now, isn't it? And you're seeing other clubs growing and becoming a real force. And I think it's a really healthy, competitive scene, because you've got Hibs winning the league, which I think was unexpected. Mm-hmm. You've got Rangers and Celtic investing in their women's teams. You've got Glasgow City and you've got Hearts, who are all credible competitors and contenders for the main trophies. So I guess that is why Glasgow City are trophyless for a couple of seasons, because other teams have grown and become more serious challengers. But I'm pleased that they're still there and that they're still a force themselves, and having a Champions League place themselves will be beneficial to the club again.
Well, the league season may be over, but the dizzying whirlwind of managerial changes doesn't seem to stop. And Cammy, first of all, it's Stuart Kettlewell expected to be announced as a new Kilmarnock manager on Monday. Do you see that as a good fit for the club and for Stuart himself?
Yeah, listen, I do. It was a strange one when it came out, and I kind of first heard that, yes, it looks as if it's certain that Stuart Kettlewell is going to be in charge of Kilmarnock next season. I mean, again, for me, the first choice probably looked at to being Stephen Naismith. I don't know how discussions went, but Stuart Kettlewell looks as if he's going to get that nod to be the manager next season. He's got a big job ahead of himself because he's got a number of players out of contract. He's got players who I think the club should be trying to keep, who they need to try and get tied down as quickly as possible. But again, that allows him to put his own stamp on things when he comes in the door. He's coming in the door at a good time as well. The season's not started yet. He's got a full pre-season ahead of him still. He's got a number of weeks to get players in the door. So yes, listen, it's a manager who knows Scottish football. So for me, it takes away the risk. Whether Kilmarnock fans will be happy with this, I'm unsure of that. But again, I think it takes a huge amount of the risk away from bringing in a foreign manager or a manager who's not been in Scottish football before.
How do you expect that appointment will go down with the Kilmarnock fans, Michael? I mean, would they have been expecting something a bit more, in inverted commas, sexy? Should it be a more of an outsider rather than someone we've seen in the Scottish game over the last few years?
I think the early mumblings from the Kilmarnock support has been quite downbeat about Kettlewell and quite sceptical about it. I think that is something that we see from clubs of all supports. They tend to be a bit wary or jaundiced about managers that they know. The kind of tried and tested, the kind of familiar. They tend to be a bit underwhelmed by that. I suppose every other club's managers annoy them at some point, don't they? So they kind of almost have negative kind of feelings towards a lot of managers, especially if they're clubs of comparable size. They kind of think, well, we could do better than that. I think the interesting thing with Stuart Kettlewell, obviously, is that we know the circumstances that made him leave the Motherwell job. The kind of personal abuse that he got. Now, he will have to talk about that, I guess, when he's back at work and facing the media, I think, later on Monday, because, I mean, Kilmarnock fans would be perfectly capable of giving him a hard time if it's not going well as well, So I suppose he would need to reassure them and the club that, he's not going to just, go out again if he feels that he's been unfairly treated, But I think they're a bit underwhelmed, Al, about Stuart Kettlewell, and he'll just have to deal with that and overcome it through results and signings and building a team.
Yeah, he did. To be fair to him, he did leave Motherwell in, I think, 5th place at the time, and there's absolutely no reason why he can't go on and do similar with Kilmarnock. But we shall see on that front. But his successor at Motherwell, Cammy, is also now left. Michael Wimmer leaving after just 12 games in charge, citing family reasons. It's a little bit curious, though, isn't it? And of course, it leaves Motherwell in the situation that they're now obviously having to look for another manager yet again. Yeah, it certainly does. And again, it was a real surprise when that news came out of Motherwell. I've heard a number of stories that a family member's not well, and obviously he was struggling to settle away from his young son as well. So, listen, family always comes first, I think, and football comes second, no matter where you are. It's a real blow for Motherwell fans and the club as well. I feel as if they were just starting to move along nicely with him in charge. People were starting to believe in him as well, and then obviously he's had to move on. I'm pretty sure the club and him will have tried their best to find a middle ground to try and keep him at the club, but it's just not worked out. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting in the direction that Motherwell go in, because listen, he's only been there for 3 months. So will they keep the same model of manager that they're looking for? Because for me, certainly things shouldn't have changed. They went out the way to find this manager that hadn't been in Scottish football, that had a certain style of play. So I think Motherwell will be looking for the exact same type of manager. Or for me, why would they 3 months ago went down that route? So it could be an interesting appointment again that comes into Motherwell. Yeah. Well, the domestic season isn't quite over, of course. We do have the small matter of the second leg of the playoff final tonight up in Dingwall between Ross County and Motherwell. It's finally poised. Michael. I thought Ross County were probably better in that first leg against Livingston than I kind of expected, given the form they've been on. Would you be brave enough to call how this one's going to end up?
Well, Ross County are survival specialists, of course, aren't they? And I'm with you, Al. I mean, I think their form has been so poor in the last few weeks. And Livingston, David Martindale's an experienced and respected coach, and their form was strong going into the final or going into this playoff. So you kind of thought Livingston could really upset County here and finally kind of bring them down. But I think they had to have a first leg lead for that, really. Came very close to getting one, of course. I suspect that for what was it, third year in a row that County would be surviving via the playoffs. But it's still a bit of a toss of the coin job, I mean, it's far from inconceivable that Livingston could go up there and steal a 1-goal win. But I have a hunch that County will be okay and that they'll come through I mean, that's a good result down there, isn't it? That will transform their confidence after a lot of recent defeats. Yeah,
the late penalty might make all the difference, Cammy. But Livy did go up in the Scottish Cup to Dingwall and win earlier in the season. So as Michael says, you certainly can't dismiss their chances of coming out of that one with a victory and coming straight back up to the top flight. No,
and again, what a story that would be for David Martindale. It's been a brilliant season for him. He's went under the radar for so long. We've spoke about Falkirk all season, but again, they just went nicely along the way and challenged them right to the end as well. So they've been very consistent this season. I think this one tonight could go all the way. I genuinely do. I think it could be penalty kicks. I think it could be that tight between these two teams. I don't see a lot splitting them. And then when the penalty kicks comes, it's a lottery. I don't know, I'm going to stick my nail out there and say I think Livingston will get up. Oh, well, you heard it here first. That's live on BBC Radio Scotland with us on Monday evening. Highlights on the television on Monday evening as well. That's all we've got time for in terms of the podcast. Many thanks to Cammy Bell and Michael Grant. Thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day. So to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Bye for now.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.